"Mommy is dying, but she promised to smile if you come to my birthday," the little girl whispered to the man, her tiny voice trembling yet filled with hope. The stranger froze in his steps, caught off guard by the words that struck him harder than anything he had ever heard before. He looked down at the little girl, who couldn't have been more than 7 years old, her dress slightly torn, her eyes wide, and her hands clutching a crumpled birthday invitation she had made herself with colored pencils. It was the kind of moment that pierces through the noise of life and demands attention. The man, whose name was Daniel, had been rushing home from work, his thoughts filled with deadlines and meetings. He had no time for interruptions, yet something about the girl stopped him. He knelt to her level and asked softly, "What did you say, sweetheart?" The little girl's lips trembled, but she repeated her words almost the same way as before. "Mommy is very sick. The doctor says she might not live for long. But she told me she will smile on my birthday if you come. Please, will you come?" Her words weren't rehearsed. They were raw and heavy, the kind that carried both innocence and unbearable pain. Daniel didn't know what to say. He felt his throat tighten as he looked into her eyes. There was a desperation in them that was impossible to ignore. He could have walked away, but something deep inside him told him that this wasn't an accident. He asked where she lived, and with small, shaky steps, she led him to a modest house just down the road. The walls were fading, the garden unkept, and the sound of coughing could be heard from inside. When they entered, Daniel saw the girl's mother lying on a worn-out couch, her body fragile, her skin pale, yet her eyes full of warmth as she forced a smile for her daughter. The girl ran to her mother's side and whispered, "Mommy, I found someone. He'll come to my birthday. You'll smile, right?" The mother looked at Daniel, a stranger who had stepped into their broken world, and whispered back, "Thank you for stopping." Her voice was weak, but it carried a weight that moved Daniel's heart in ways he hadn't felt in years. The following days unfolded like a storm and a sunrise together. Daniel discovered that the mother, whose name was Sarah, had been battling a terminal illness. She was a single parent, abandoned by her husband years earlier, and had been working odd jobs until her health no longer allowed it. The little girl, Emma, had been her only strength, her reason to keep holding on. But with Sarah's condition worsening, Emma had only one wish: to celebrate one last birthday with her mother smiling beside her. The challenge was overwhelming. Sarah had no money for a party. There was no cake, no balloons, no presents. Only the love between a mother and daughter kept their small home alive with hope. Daniel, once a man consumed with his own ambitions, found himself drawn into their world. He offered to help, not out of pity, but because Emma's words had touched a place in him he thought was long gone. He began to visit daily, bringing food, medicine, and sometimes just his presence. Still, there were struggles. Sarah's health declined rapidly. Some nights, Daniel heard Emma crying quietly while holding her mother's hand, afraid that if she let go, her mother would slip away in her sleep. Doctors warned that Sarah might not make it through the week, yet she clung on, determined to fulfill her promise to smile on Emma's birthday. The day of the birthday finally came. Daniel had worked quietly behind the scenes, gathering neighbors and friends who had once been distant but now rallied together. The small living room was transformed with colorful balloons, paper decorations, and a cake that Daniel had ordered with Emma's favorite flavor, chocolate with strawberries. For Emma, it was a miracle. For Sarah, it was a final gift. When Sarah was helped to sit up, wearing a simple dress and a weak but radiant smile, Emma ran into her arms shouting, "Mommy, you kept your promise." The room filled with claps and tears as Sarah held her daughter close. In that moment, Sarah wasn't just a sick woman. She was a mother, a fighter, a beacon of love. She looked at Daniel, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "You gave her this happiness. I can go in peace." The party was simple, but it was filled with laughter, songs, and love. Sarah smiled through her pain, keeping her promise to her daughter. For a few precious hours, illness and fear disappeared. All that remained was joy. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Sarah called Daniel to her side. She thanked him for stepping into their lives when he could have easily walked away. With a frail hand, she asked him to watch over Emma when she was gone. Daniel, overwhelmed, promised with all his heart. Sarah closed her eyes with relief, holding on to the peace that her daughter would not be alone. Days later, Sarah passed away, but she left behind a legacy of love and a memory of her smile on Emma's birthday. Emma grieved, but she wasn't alone. Daniel kept his promise, raising her as if she were his own. Together, they found healing in the pain, light in the darkness. Emma grew up knowing that her mother had given her the greatest gift: a smile, a memory, and the assurance that love never truly dies. And for Daniel, that one whispered sentence from a little girl changed the course of his life forever. The story leaves us with a reminder: sometimes, the smallest voices speak the loudest truths, and sometimes, the greatest impact comes not from grand plans but from stopping, listening, and choosing to care.